The market right now is pretty competitive and our partner. So I know within Optum, our advisory practice does a lot of smaller engagements where they work with third parties, startups, other organizations, and bring those in. Happy to be here. Tina Galloway. I am a client, senior client executive, vice president with Optum. Yeah. So what I concentrate on and what I'm going to talk about is how to some best practices, tips for selling into health plans. The market right now is pretty competitive, and one of the reasons there's a couple reasons why the market right now is pretty competitive from a health plan perspective. One just has to do with the fact that there are a lot of tools out there, and the marketplace during COVID, and then afterwards has just been flooded. Rightly so. There was a lot of emphasis on healthcare in general, and because of the emphasis on healthcare, a lot of investors have pumped money into the market. So rightly so, that makes sense. There's a flood of tools out there. So you have to clear out the noise, so to speak, with the health plan so that they can so that they focus. However, the other things that are happening is more, I would say, shifts in the market. So some of the things that have shifted is medical costs. Almost if you listen to any of the earnings reports from any of the major health insurers, and so or any of the major healthcare companies, for example, CVS, Humana, Cigna, any of those companies, they're going to say that their medical costs have gone up significantly in this year has impacted their bottom line. Some of them have even cut their forecasts because of the medical costs. So the reason for that is one is inflation, of course. The second thing is pressures on health systems. Health systems had enormous pressures coming out of COVID and have suffered or basically have had a lot of issues as far as being able to make up for cost deficits. That impacts the insurer or the payer because then the health system have all pretty much asked for double-digit increases in pricing. So any negotiations going forward, health systems are asking for more money. So add that on top, and then the other thing is utilization. Utilization was kind of pent up. Demand was pent up during COVID. Demand has picked up. People are back getting healthcare services. So spending is high. Payers are managing for that. The other thing that's happened is Medicare, Medicaid during the public health emergency. A lot of people went on Medicaid. That's over. Shifts have happened, and so there's a shift in membership. Some plans picked up a lot of Medicaid membership. They're losing that. They might go to the exchange. They may not. They may be out there uninsured. So they've lost membership. So that's another thing. Then CMS is signaling that they're going to a big cost driver of revenue for a lot of health plans has been Medicare Advantage. It's been a very profitable business for many health insurers. CMS is signaling that they're going to change the models and reduce some of the payments, or just restrict on some of it, which could impact the overall profitability of the market. And then I'll say the final one, and the one that I was at a meeting yesterday in the Midwest with the health plan, GLP-1 drugs. Plans don't know what that's going to mean for them in the future. The example that was given to me is that if you say to a health plan that I have to pay $1,000 a month for a member for the rest of their life, what does that mean without any guarantees of outcomes? So there's a lot of pressure there from health plans. So because of that, there is, I think, the ways to approach. I would say that the market, and because of all of that, there's a need to be very intentional and refined about how you approach health plans or how you sell to health plans. One of the things that I think the biggest thing is that, of course, you can't do everything and you have to maximize your time and you have to find the right person. So one of the things that I think is pivotal is spending the time up front to identify who is the right person to engage with and who's the buyer. if the person doesn't have the if the person who you're talking to isn't the buyer, doesn't have a budget, doesn't have the ability to make a decision, then um, my recommendation would be to use them to find out who that is. So if that person, and not spending a lot of time with that person because of maximizing your time, but then also because it's very difficult right now to identify what the issues are. So spending a lot of time with someone who does not have budget, can't make those decisions, is probably spinning wheels. And I find that that's something that just in sales in general is more of an art versus a science. So I could give a bunch of recommendations on how to qualify a lead or qualify a person. However, I think some of that is an art and less of a science. However, I think that there also needs to be a process or a refinement of a process as you're going about the trying to prospect and qualify leads. So as you're going through situations where you're talking to potential buyers at health plans, listening to them, trying to understand their problems, trying to sort through the noise of what they're saying to get to a place where you can find where you would provide value to them. Also, doing a look back on that process. So every time that you do that, I have a technique that we do with our teams is we always debrief, but then we always like dissect the process and look for the ways that we could maximize or make this more efficient for the next time. So that process of qualifying leads is something that if you're continuously, you have a continuous feedback loop and you're continuously looking at that, you just get better and better at being able to qualify those leads and being able to qualify the right person. The other thing that I'd say is that most plans, due to the things that I just mentioned around cost, most plans do not have an appetite to spend money on any administrative tools that do not have ROI and just add to the noise. So I would say one of the other things to focus on in conversation is how does this eliminate the noise or eliminate one more thing that has to be done in the process. So example is that if you add one more tool to a provider's toolkit, it more than likely won't get used. If you integrate your tool into, let's say, the EHR, and the tool now this process becomes intuitive, less work, easy, then that's a value add to the health plan and it's a value add to the health provider. And so that's one of the things that most health plans and health providers are going to be listening for when we talk about tools, solutions that are supposed to help them. They're going to be looking for how does this take away something? Because if they're looking at their administrative spend and they're looking at their tools, they're going to say, well, I have tools that do X, Y, Z, this number of things. Can I get rid of one of these? Is your tool going to cut the cost? And it doesn't always mean that the ROI means that you're going to guarantee that they're going to save on necessarily XYZ amount of dollars on outcomes. But the ROI could be you could get rid of 3 tools or you could cut those 3 tools by using my one, and I'm going to make it easier on your providers to do that. So in that, I think the other things that I would just note is also striking that appropriate. So when in that process, there's like this appropriate balance between listening and your expertise. We try to approach all of our clients in a very consultative way. So in that process of qualifying, it's not necessarily just to pitch to that buyer, but more to help them and to consult with them. But there's a balance between listening to them to identify where's the pain points and where are the places that you could add value. And then let me also give you or share my expertise with you. Usually that goes a long way in developing the relationship over time, that then they start to talk about the frustrations, and then you can identify the ways to solve the problem. And you also identify the ways to reduce the costs and eliminate the noise for them. In a perfect world, that would be the ideal path, is to find someone who has that ability to be a buyer, really can be a voice for the organization. You can have that dialogue, share your expertise with them where they feel like they're getting a lot of value from the opportunity. And then they're also sharing with you the information that's going to help you make the sale to them, which is you're going to ultimately, from that, glean where are their frustrations, how can you reduce their administrative costs, the some of the other costs that they may be, or problems that they may be facing, and how are you going to eliminate some of that noise for them, and ultimately how are you going to put together a plan that does that for them, step by step. And then the final thing that I would just say really quick is just creating flexible ways to engage also. Some of the larger organizations, Optum included, not as flexible because they're large and they won't do some of the small pilots. They won't work on some innovative projects. They just won't do it. So I think that's an opportunity for small organizations to create creative contracting arrangements, flexible ways to engage, creative pilots. All of that is opportunities to get in there and grow that balance between expertise and listening, and just grow that relationship over time.
Thank you so much, Tina. 2 quick questions from me, and then I'll open it up for everyone. And I'll just bucket them. So you mentioned that finding a buyer is sometimes a challenge. Could you give some typical titles that a real buyer would typically have? And the second question, a lot of startups, they have additional benefits. They are not kind of the full coverage, but they have a small benefit and add on. So what's the best way to sell those to a health plan?
Yeah. Good question. So the first one, typical titles might be something like, so yes, if there's somebody who's VP level or above, VP or SVP of things like transformation, innovation, usually those are the people that are looking for ways to do things differently. If there's product, if it's a member or a consumer engagement tool, then maybe someone who's like VP of product, sales and marketing. Interestingly, sales and marketing is interested in that because they're trying to find ways to sell their product into like employer groups or, into the state and people like that. So so that type of person wants to hear something that's going to make their product differentiate their product. If it's clinical, then it's a chief medical officer. It could also be VP of clinical operations or services, healthcare services, that type of title. I'd start at VP and SVP. The directors can direct you. So not saying that it's not good to talk to a director. I think directors are really great to talk to say, who's the decision maker in your organization? Can you introduce me to that person in a nice way, not to downgrade they're very instrumental, but usually they can't make the buying decision. They just can introduce you or promote someone. Your second question, say that one more time because I think I forgot.
They have an add-on benefit. So this is not like a health plan, but something that is add-on to an existing plan.
Yeah. So two things that I've seen that I think is really helpful here. One is partnerships with organizations like Optum. So what we've done is we have a lot more partnerships where we're bringing our tools together with a startup or a smaller tool that they have the innovative piece that we need, and we're anchoring them together to sell to our client base. One, it's really great because if you can get that opportunity to do that, Optum has the clients, they can make the introductions for you. So the selling process is kind of like deferred a little bit over to the Optum organization, and that's the value that Optum get. But then the other value that Optum gets is they have a unique differentiating product in the market because now they've taken their core tool and tacked on something that might be really innovative and different. So that's one thing that I've seen that I think is we're doing a lot more of, and is a great idea. The other thing is some of these creative pilots. So getting in there and kind of talking and saying, we could do this for you on a small scale, pilot it. We'll be real creative about it, and we'll find the way to be able to integrate. So through the pilot, we're going to work with you because some of these organizations also don't have the resources to devote anybody on their team to do the connect. So they'll immediately say, we can't buy it because we don't have the resources, we don't have the time, But if they trust you as a partner and they want and you offer it, they may be willing to let you kind of look behind the hood, so to speak, and do a pilot on a small to see how do we integrate this? How do we get this through? This is a great idea, but we just don't have the time. So those are two things that I think might I've seen work and be successful.
Ken Russell here. I'm a
Okay.
Chief Innovation Officer for the state of Virginia, or one of the Chief Innovation Officers. And you mentioned this really interesting thing. You mentioned innovation quite a lot in the past few minutes, and I'm going to be real quick here. There seems to be a paradox of how do we connect with, we connect with academic partners and with small clinical facilities in rural Virginia to make a real change, right? But it's hard to get folks like Optum to get involved because, like you said, they're so big, but they're so if they can kind of help be partners in doing POCs. And I'll just stop right there. So thanks.
One of the places that I think within organization, well, I'll speak for Optum specifically, and then some of the other organizations. Within Optum specifically, I think one of the places that there could be more interest, and this is hard to navigate because Optum is really, really big, is within our advisory practice. And I don't think that a lot of times they might not think that within the consulting world that they're a likely partner. However, I have found that consultants a lot of times are consulting with the health plans, health systems, the states, and they're putting together ideas or roadmaps for solutions and recommendations. They don't necessarily build it, but some of them do. But in some cases, they're putting together recommendations, and they're usually they may be working on smaller initiatives where they can get someone in as a pilot or a partner. So I know within Optum, our advisory practice does a lot of smaller engagements where they work with third parties, startups, other organizations, and bring those in. And I think that's so even Deloitte, some of the other consultants that are out there that have healthcare practices, they're also potentially opportunities to work together to say, who are your clients? And do you actually have tools that you're bringing to them? And what are some of the places that you're finding needs? And maybe we have solutions that we could partner together and go in and talk to different clients about.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. And thank you, everyone, for joining our February advisory board meeting for all advisors. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.